Approval of the minutes from the past board meeting on June 19th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As a part of my presidential information, I would like to have an update from the chief on the building.
Charles, good morning. The City of St. Louis has issued a notice to proceed. Construction has started on our new building at 1915 Olive. Construction began this week. The contractor took control of the building. The estimated target date for completion is the second week of April of next year. So we have roughly 270 days until the building's complete and we're ready to begin our move. So contracts have been signed, work has begun, and now the clock's ticking until April of next year.
Any questions? Thank you for the report. Colonel?
Thank you, Colonels. The following items are presented in your bid packets that you received, and copies of these packets are available on the table in the front of the room. Included in these packets are any disclaimers regarding board members' business and family relationships, if any. The first item are for bid items. We have 9 bid items listed, in all cases selecting the lowest bid. These include leather uniform items, wood shavings for horse stalls, horse feed, hay, veterinary services, micro lifter shaft guard filter tips, supplies, and identification equipment, and equipment for the laboratory. So I move approval of all 9 items.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The second item under the purchasing report are sole source requests, and we have 6 sole source requests. And I recommend approval of these 6 items: subscription advantage, renewal, software maintenance, parts and supplies for the radios, service and monitoring for radios, and small arms ammunition, and the freezer monitor service agreement. So I move approval of those 6 items.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye. The next item are for continuations of previous bids. We have 3 items here that are for maintenance of our telecommunications system, for our radio infrastructure, and for our telephone infrastructure. And I move approval of those 3 items.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item is for continuation of a previous contract, and this is for color copier rental, 1 item with Xerox, and I move approval of that item.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Finally, I move for ratification of 9 early approval items that were done right before the end of the fiscal year. These were reviewed by me near the end of the fiscal year and then approved by Colonel Gray. Out of these 9 items, 7 of them are items which were simply moving the expense into the 2013 fiscal year instead of the 2014 fiscal year. It actually did not involve any type of new authorization for purchase. The other 2 items were for automobiles that we acquire through the Missouri Department of Transportation bids, and so those are items where we had the money available to make the purchase, and the bidding had already taken place through the Missouri Department of Transportation. So this is for ratification of those 9 items that got early approval.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
Colonel, good morning again, and as we typically do, we'll start our presentation this morning with an update on the crime situation through the month of June, so for the first 6 months. So the first slide, we always look at the high-level view of the city. If you'll notice, the red category represents the total number of crimes that have occurred in the city of St. Louis through the first 6 months through the end of June this year, and we see a 7.1% decrease, or 957 fewer crimes in the city of St. Louis through the first 6 months. The gold category represents property crimes, and I think of particular interest is the blue, which is person crimes. Person crimes are homicides, robberies, aggravated assaults, rapes, and we've seen a significant decrease in that category, almost a 20% drop through the first 6 months in those areas, or 600 fewer crimes. Then we always look for context, and I always like to talk about how this year is comparing to the past couple of years. So this slide that we typically use looks back to 2006. And what I did is I looked at the first 6 months of 2013 compared to the first 6 months of 2006, just to see what the comparison changes were. Person crime now is down 41.3% compared to 2006. Property crime is down 47.2% compared to 2006, and total crime in the city of St. Louis has seen a 46% drop since 2006. So it's an indication that the city of St. Louis is safer, that the officers of the Metropolitan Police Department are doing a good job, and our goal is to continue to see those downward decreases. But so really to sum it up again, since 2006, for the first 6 months, comparing month to month, a 46% decrease in crime. So some of our strategies are having a definite impact, and I'll talk about one of those in just a minute. The next slide looks at the city. In comparison, we have 3 patrol divisions that comprise the city. Each patrol division has 3 districts, as you know. All of the areas are seeing decreases. The challenge is property crime. In the North Patrol right now, we've seen about a 7% uptick in property crime, driven primarily by burglaries and larcenies. And Colonel O'Toole and Special Operations under Major Speece have initiated some strategies to target larcenies in those areas, and each of the captains have been challenged to develop strategies to address the burglaries. So burglaries and larcenies are driving those categories, but as you can see, with the exception of property crime and North Patrol, crime is down in all parts of the city. The next slide looks at those Part 1 crimes that we talked about. I also want to, as we get into this, mention we just concluded a 4-month project with ATF in the city of St. Louis that we in-house called the Surge. And what that did is it brought about 80 ATF agents to the city of St. Louis, and they partnered with Colonel O'Toole and his bureau. They partnered with Major Speece and Special Operations, and they partnered with Lieutenant Kuntz in our intelligence division to target individuals that were actively involved in crimes involving firearms and guns. Over that 4-month period, and that 4-month period represented about a $2 million investment in the city of St. Louis by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. During that 4-month period, there were over 200 individuals that were arrested in St. Louis County, and in East St. Louis. Those 200 individuals, just to give you kind of a context of some of the challenges we deal with, had been arrested over 2,300 times, and those 200 individuals had over 500 convictions. So we've taken a significant number of criminals, bad people, off the street in the last 4 months, and we're hoping to see a residual impact from that over the coming months. We're going to follow those individuals through federal prosecutions, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and through state prosecutions with Jennifer Joyce's office. So when we look at the categories, and I wanted to point out aggravated assaults, as you can see there, are down almost by 464 crimes. That's a 27% reduction through the first 6 months. That shows that we are having an impact in aggravated assaults. We are having an impact in crimes that involve firearms. If you see, all of the other categories are down except 2. Rape, which we've talked about, and we will see an increase this year in rapes, not because of an increase in the number of crimes, but because of better reporting and a change in the UCR, the FBI reporting requirements. So I see that increase, although increases are never good. It captures more victims, and it brings an attention to that category. The other one is a slight increase, 8 larcenies citywide. They seem to be concentrated in the 2 specific areas, a corridor that leads Hampton into Forest Park, and then in North St. Louis. So our strategies are targeting larcenies, but except for those 2 categories, we're seeing decreases in all of the other categories. The next slide looks at the homicide distribution, the number of homicides that have occurred throughout the city in each patrol division, and it's a historical look back to 2003. Just as a reference. I always like to look at our trends on a historical perspective. The next slide looks at homicides. We've talked about the spike that we had in January, but since January, our homicide rate has continued to trend below our 5-year average. Currently, we are below last year's number at this time, and with partnerships like the ATF Surge that we talked about, the Homicide Ministers Alliance, our focus on retaliatory strategies, we can hope to see that number to continue to reduce. But we're trending below last year and well below our 5-year trend in homicides. Citywide robberies, again, the same perspective, looking at how we are trending on a 5-year curve to robberies. As you saw earlier, robberies are down compared to last year. They're also down compared to the 5-year trend. Aggravated assaults, we talked about the decrease in aggravated assaults compared to last year. And again, a look back over the last 5 years, we continue to trend below the 5-year line. Burglaries, as I mentioned, I'm a little concerned about burglaries. Over the last month or so, we have seen an increase in the number of burglaries. Still down compared to last year, still down compared to the last 5 years. But when we do our weekly ComStat meetings on Thursday, we not only look at year-to-year comparisons, but we look at previous week and the previous 4 weeks. We're seeing an increase in burglaries, and so we're adjusting our strategies to target into those crimes in those neighborhoods where we're seeing them increase. Larcenies, a similar story. Again, larcenies are virtually flat. I think there were 8 crimes different. But in our 1 week and our 4 week trends at ComStat, we're seeing an increase in some areas, and we're driving our strategies to try and intercept those, but we are trending below the 5-year line. This is a new slide, and I wanted to share it. It's through the month of May is the gray line, through the month of June. So we can see, it's kind of a diagnostic tool for me, so I can see if we're continuing to make gains in categories or if we're giving some of our gains back. As you can see, as we look through it, this is specifically for larcenies. So pickpockets, crimes are down in June compared to May, or through June compared to through May. Purse snatchings, we've given back a little bit of those gains, and we'll continue to focus on those, but it's a relatively small category. Shoplifting continues to be a struggle for us. We take quite a few larcenies that involve shoplifting. Those are very difficult for us to police. We've worked with stores like Shop and Save, like Schnucks, like some of the gas stations to have security, to have better measures in place to help intercept and reduce that crime. Motor vehicle parts are virtually flat. From motor vehicles are flat. Motor vehicle parts we're trending in the right direction there. Bicycles is not a particularly large category, but we have seen, as burglaries increase, we've also seen an increase in bicycle theft. Buildings are thefts from buildings, unattended purses, things left on desks that we've seen, again, virtually flat, but a slight uptick, and you can see through. But this is one of the things that I've been stressing in ComStat is it's great to do a historical comparison year to year, and even to make sure that we're in the right spot, and even the 5-year trends to make sure we're in the right spot. But we're looking to identify those quick trends, those 1 week trends, those 4 week trends. Are we headed in the right direction? Do we see spikes in specific areas? And it fits right into our hotspot policing. Next month, I will make a presentation which will show a new series of hotspot maps that we're introducing into the ComStat process that will show not only where the current hotspots are, but it will have a predictive characteristic to it, which will show historically, let's say in the month of July, this area has been a problem. Should we be focusing into that area? So we're excited about that, and Crime Analysis Unit has done a great job in developing those maps. So we'll have that in August for you to look at. Again, vehicle thefts. Match the 5-year trend. Vehicle thefts by type, we're always interested in what types of cars are being stolen. This is an interesting category because there have been some changes in the way scrappers do their business. So as you can see, passenger automobiles are down, thefts are down. Trucks and buses were up, and again, because of the heavier weight, the scrap value of those cars, early in the year we saw an increase in those, but they're coming down a little bit, and motorcycles and scooters represent a small section of the category. And that concludes my crime presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I have one for you. Just discuss Washington Avenue last year compared to this year, how things are going in that area.
We've spent, last year, Washington Avenue was a victim of their success. They saw tremendous crowds coming into the environment because they represented an entertainment value. It was a destination in the city. The late night economy, the bar business, drove a lot of the activities in that area. They attracted not only the 21 plus crowd, but a significant number of teenagers. Teenagers look for things to do. Washington Avenue represented a destination. Early last year, we saw some conflicts between groups that were there, misbehavior, and we've really worked with Washington Avenue, the downtown partnership, to bring that more into line. What is going on this year now is we've always had our downtown footbeats, our downtown bicycles, focused on Washington Avenue during the hours of the late night economy, really Friday, Saturday, sometimes Thursday, sometimes Sunday. We've seen that focus. Washington Avenue and the Downtown Partnership have also stepped up this year and have engaged private security, our off-duty police officers, to supplement the activities that we're doing. And I think that mixture of on-duty officers and officers paid for by the partnership in Washington Avenue have really helped to change the behavior on Washington Avenue. Like any area, there will be an isolated incident, but it's come much more into line with the expectations that we have for an entertainment district. I will also tell you that Washington Avenue now expands really almost from the riverfront through downtown, through Tucker, to 18th Street, to almost Jefferson, and pretty soon I see Washington Avenue meeting up with the development that's going in the Midtown area right now, and there'll be a continuous strip. With anything, density is always a challenge. As that area becomes more geographically wider or broader, it disperses the crowd and it helps manage it as well. So we have not seen nearly the challenges on Washington Avenue this year that we saw last year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I'd just like to make a comment. I think, first of all, I want to congratulate and thank the Chief, Colonel Atkins, Colonel O'Toole, men and women of the St. Louis Police Department, for your involvement and your part of the successful surge that was announced just a little while ago. It was very successful. There was about 159, I think, arrests that were made representing individuals that had over 2,300 different arrests and over 500 convictions for these individuals in the past. So you were all part of getting a lot of bad people off the streets in the St. Louis region, and this is a regional, this has a regional impact. But what I wanted to say was that I spent a fair amount of time with the U.S. attorneys who were involved, the ATF particular agents that were there, and representatives, and one of the things that they were very clear about is that they were very impressed with the St. Louis Police Department. Talking about the professionalism, the quality, the talent, the focus on getting things done and doing it right, and their reliability in terms of being there, knowing what they're doing, and knowing how to address many of the individuals and the situations that we're faced with. So I was very proud to be in the room with the chief and the two colonels, and when we're hearing all this great news about our department. Not anything I was surprised about, but I think it's good to know that, I think it's good to share with everyone we don't take for granted the talent, the quality of the department that we do have here. We should be very proud of it, and they were not, by the way, as complimentary to another department in the area. I'm not talking about St. Louis County, but it was one of those things where you know, it's good to see, and it's good to get the accolades from I mean, these are pros. These are guys that know what they're doing. They've been all over the country, and they made a point to say, you've got a really professional team here. So thank you all for all your efforts. We're certainly all proud of you, and you know, we've got some work to do to maintain the, I guess, what you've been able to accomplish there. But I know we've got a great team in place to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Mayor. The next two items, the recruitment update, which is going to be presented by Colonel Nashero. His bureau houses the Human Resources Division, and the promotional process for police officer to sergeant are closely related. After our conversations last week, I wanted to present the board with an overview of what our recruitment activities look like, how our Human Resources Division is focused on increasing the available candidate pool for hire by the Metropolitan Police Department, and how that impacts our ability to administer a promotion process and really have a department that provides the best candidates for promotion and is reflective of the department and the community. So I'd ask Colonel Nashero to give you an overview of the report for minority recruitment, and then I'll come back and talk about the promotional process.
Morning. I won't go over all the statistical information of the report, but I would like to point out just a couple of things that the report tells us. Overall, the metropolitan statistical area where the Police Department focuses most of its attention on recruiting, tells us that the population of that area for minorities is about 23%. As you work through the report, you will see that the applicants that apply to the Metropolitan Police Department as far as minority candidates are concerned always exceeds that 23% statistical rating. What we do know then is, as you go through a series of tests in the police department, because we do written tests, oral interview boards, a physical fitness test, and then a background check, about proportionately, the candidates that survive, whether they're minority candidates or white candidates, is statistically about the same if you average the last 3 years of this report. What we do know, and is what is always concerned, is what happens long-term within the police department after we do the hiring process. And part of that affects the discussion about how many minorities remain on the Metropolitan Police Department, even though the application process is the same. So we have really a two-prong attack in order to increase our minority population within the police department. The first is actually to try and do a better job at the actual incoming process of recruiting minorities into the police department. One of the things I do know is that one of the recommendations you read is how we are going to try and redouble our efforts to do advertising in predominantly African American or minority business papers in magazines. When we get the results of what people tell us of why they came down and applied to the Metropolitan Police Department, that is really a minute factor of all of the recruiting that we do. The real big factor and the important factor that everybody needs to know is our most successful recruiting tool in this police department has been for several years, and Sarah could speak up if she wants, is word of mouth by our employees. So when our employees go out and talk about our company, and they talk about the benefits, the diversity of assignments, that is the best selling point that we could possibly have, and we get the majority of our people, when we ask them why they came down to apply, they tell us it's a word-of-mouth discussion between employees and people in our community about this police department. So that's going to be one of the focuses of getting our own employees energized to bring in new people into the police department. We're also doing a couple other things that are long-term about recruitment. As you know, we talked to the board several months ago about an alliance that Sean McCarthy, our educational technologist, is developing with the major universities in the city of St. Louis. And what we hope to do is increase our relationship with them in a partnership so we can take their candidates and have them come into our police department as they continue their educational processes. And that's a win-win situation for us. And so when you create those kind of situations for major universities who are trying to recruit minorities, who are trying to recruit into their colleges gender-based applicants, and as they increase that and we can give them a path to jobs, they'll have more success. That'll lead to more success in the Metropolitan Police Department. One other benefit that we know of, better educated candidates, whether they are white, black, male, or female, have a tendency to stay longer with the Metropolitan Police Department. We produced a report for you when we talked about the universities where we lose 60% of the African American candidates who only have high school diplomas within 7 years of their entry into the police department. You can see statistically how that affects the population, how it affects our promotional processes. So when we talk about recruitment, we have to talk about retention and how all of the different facets of what we do as an employer fit together and really change all of those steps, not just the recruitment process. Part of those recommendations are specifically in this report about the focus of concentrating on African American colleges, newspapers, and those things to increase that part of our minority population. But all the other components we've talked about over the board over the last 6, 7, 8 months are a piece of that puzzle that we're putting together. And hopefully as we study it, we're going to have more success, and we are going to have more minority candidates. And when I talk about minority candidates, we're not only talking about African Americans, but we're talking about Hispanics, females, Bosnians, and all of the other population indexes of the city of St. Louis. And in the future, we hope to have a more diversified workforce for you. And I'll answer any questions that you would like. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Colonel, for all your efforts. This is something that is extremely important to this board and the boards that I've served on throughout, and trying to do everything we can to help improve diversity and inclusion within the department. It makes the department stronger. It also, I think, makes the department a lot more effective. And we do all understand that, doing this is not easy. It does take, though, a concerted effort, and the kind of information that you've been able to bring to the table to us really helps us in working with you and the administration in finding better ways to recruit and finding out, what can be done to help improve opportunities for more minorities, and I'm talking about the broad spectrum of minorities within St. Louis, to this department. So thank you for all your work. We have our work to do, and working with you and the consulting firm to kind of finalize our approach to this so that we can, move forward in making sure that we continue our efforts to improve the diversity within the department.
Thank you.
Colonels, the next item you have before you is a request to adopt a promotional process for police officer to sergeant, which will create a list that is effective January 1 of 2014 and will remain in effect for a year and a half until the end of June of 2015. There are several recommendations before you that you have. You also have a copy of a special order or promotion policy, which will be distributed to our employees once adopted, which will outline the entire process, the components of the test, and the weighting of the test. And that will be followed up by meetings with the test provider, E.B. Jacobs, who the board has previously identified as the firm hired to do the process. And as we talked earlier, it'll also include opportunities at our academy for our employees to prepare for the test and get the information they needed to score better on the test. So I can step through the individual components of the test, or if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But the recommendation is to accept E.B. Jacobs and the department's Promotional Development Committee's recommendation and the below changes or the below policy for the next testing process for PO to sergeant.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Is there any discussion first? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Thank you, Colonels. The next item is a private security matter. It's a request from our private security division to enter into a training agreement with Securitas Security and to allow Mark Hamilton to provide impact weapon baton training and pepper spray training to licensed security personnel employed by Securitas.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is a request from our intelligence division to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the FBI Gang Safe Streets Task Force to cover expenses and reimbursement for some of the activities of our members that are working on the task force.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a request to accept a donation from STARS, the St. Louis Area Regional Response System, and East-West Gateway Council for purchases made for our SWAT team that total about just under $14,000.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is a request from the Police Foundation to accept a donation of approximately $40,000. As the board may be aware, that the Police Foundation has taken on the charge of supporting our memorial breakfast, which occurs each May. This year, they underwrote the entire cost of the breakfast to the tune of about $40,000. This is to accept that donation and the continued support of the foundation for the memorial breakfast.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a comment, though. I'm beginning to wonder, what do we do without the St. Louis Police Foundation? Since they do so much for us, since I've been here, I mean, we must have had a hard time meeting ends, because this is amazing what they do.
The quality of...
Just for the record, I would like for it to be on the record that we appreciate everything that they do for the police department, and I'm sure that you all do too.
The quality of life has improved over the last couple of years because of the Police Foundation.
The only thing we need now are pay increases, right?
The next item is to accept another donation from the Police Foundation in the amount of about $7,500 for portable cell phone chargers.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item A concerns a proposed modification to Rule 1 of the Police Manual, specifically Section 1.009. This is essentially a required change as a result of the legislation that came into effect as a result of the local control statute being passed, because part of the verbiage of that legislation says that the board, during this transition period, shall designate and authorize its secretary to act on behalf of the board for purposes of performing the board's duties and any other actions incident to the transfer and winding down of the board's affairs. This will not go into effect until the terms of the board members would expire. So I would ask the board to approve that proposed modification.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item B concerns another proposed modification to Rule 1 of the Police Manual. This one specifically is Section 1.011. This is another anticipatory change to the manual with regard to the oath of office that all our commissioned officers take. Currently, the Board of Police Commissioners is listed as the rule promulgator that the officers must take an oath to. This proposed modification would remove the board and just put the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. So we would ask for approval of that proposed modification.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item C concerns a proposed revision to Rule 10 of the Police Manual. This deals with uniforms and uniform requirements. As you can see, this was vetted through the Uniform Safety and Equipment Committee, which consists of not only management people, but rank and file as well. It's also been approved by the chief. All the proposed modifications are on the attachment in back of that memorandum, and so we would ask the board to approve the proposed modifications to Rule 10, and I believe Colonel Switzer has a comment.
Yes, I move approval of the proposal with one modification from what has been distributed, and that is the section dealing with caps, Section 10.005. The last sentence of the proposed modification is, "The wearing of skull caps is not allowed under any condition," period. And I would like to modify that to have a comma instead of the period, and then add the phrase, "unless a religious exemption is applied for and granted pursuant to department procedures." And with that modification, I move approval of the proposed changes to the uniform rules.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I understand where the colonel was coming from with his modification, but I'm thinking in terms of totality of a uniform that you have on. Some things, just like military is military, we're quasi-military. That means that we have a uniform that must be worn, and it must be seen by all people to be the same. So if you start dealing with flexibility in uniforms, in my opinion, you're going to make it more difficult for people, number one, to not necessarily recognize you, but it takes away from a uniform. I don't think that a uniform in this kind of setting should be tampered with. I don't think that the women are required that they be wearing yellow and blue scarves with their uniforms. I don't think they should do that. It's a uniform. It represents the police department. So I understand religious freedom and all of that, but I personally do not see where we ought to change the uniform code for the police department. Of course, my vote is one, so you all go ahead and do what you like. Thank you.
So, with that being said, do you want to withdraw the change and modification and go with the initial recommendation.
I would like to at least, if it's okay, if it doesn't pass, to at least table it, let us talk about this further, because this is an issue with a uniform that you're changing, and I don't want to be guilty of changing a uniform, like a police.
Then,
Unless they wear it under the hat, pull it off with the hat.
If a motion is being made to table this, that would be what's called a secondary motion, which actually takes precedence over what's called the main motion, which is the motion that's been put forth by Colonel Switzer. So far, are you making a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion to table it, to give us chance to really look at this closely before we vote on it.
Is there a second?
I will second Colonel Turner's secondary motion.
Okay, so that,
any further discussions? If not,
you would call the secondary motion to table for a vote.
okay. Secondary motion to be tabled for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, then the matter is tabled. Item D is a residency waiver request. You should have in your packet a copy of the correspondence from the employee requesting the waiver, a copy of Rule 8, Section 8.005 of the Police Manual, which spells out the provisions for when a waiver is to be granted, and for the board members, only a copy of medical records that have been supplied by the applicant.
Before I vote, does this comply with all does this comply with all the rules for request for a waiver? That's my first issue.
You want me to speak in the capacity of general counsel?
Yes.
As the rule is presently constituted, I don't believe it applies to the individual applicant employee himself or herself. It appears, based on the verbiage of subparagraph 3 of subsection C, that it refers only to long-term care by the employee of a disabled person.
So it's in violation of the, correct?
This is just
See,
my
I didn't want
opinion.
us to vote on it without knowing. I read what the rule says, but I need your interpretation on this board. I don't want to vote on something that is not done correctly.
My interpretation is that under the rule as it's presently stated, the request probably does not fit within the parameters of something that's allowed.
Right.
Okay.
Because while I would like to just vote yes, honestly, based upon the conditions and the reasons given, I've got to be sure it is in compliance with the rules. So my heart says yes, my intellect says follow the rule.
I would like to make a motion that is not the one that was on the agenda, but a motion to direct the general counsel to prepare a modification to the rules that take into account a disabled employee as opposed to simply a disabled, as opposed to only a disabled family member of an employee. I think that's a gap that was, in my opinion, was probably inadvertently omitted and I think should be included. So before reaching this specific individual, I would like to make that motion to direct the general counsel to prepare a modification for our next meeting.
And I would second that motion.
Chief, you have
If I could, in doing that, I'd also ask that it be broadened a little bit to ask for the impact that a change to that rule would have to our fit-for-duty test and our essential abilities to perform the function of police officers. Because simply changing the rule without taking that into account may leave the department in a situation where we're having a conversation with an employee who claims to be disabled and is not, and their ability to perform the essential functions as a police officer. So I would just ask it to be just a little bit broader than to create the language for a rule change, but to do a study about how that impacts the other aspects of the job.
I think what's so convincing about here is the medical report where the doctor, physical and occupational therapists are both giving their input, indicating that he cannot do things by himself. But I think that you can have that incorporated. Am I right, Mark? Can we look at it broadly to encompass what the chief is saying as well?
If it's made by motion, yeah.
I actually think my motion covers that situation because my motion is suggesting that you, and maybe I should clarify this, that my motion would suggest that we have a parallel provision to section C3, which gives the board the discretion to evaluate the situation. And so I would expect that there would be input from the chief as you develop a rule to deal with a disabled employee. But ultimately, the board would make the decision as to whether the person qualifies for the disability, the disability exemption.
So you would just like it to be within the board's authority to grant, but still subject to the board's evaluation of an individual situation on a case-by-case basis?
Which is what the parallel rule is for disabled family members, so yes.
So it's been motion and second. Vote?
Before we go, I'd like to just ask a question, because we have a person here asking for a waiver. What impact is this going to have on the employee for us to wait another month? Because I think that's something that's important. If we got to wait another month before we come up with a change to this rule and make a decision on this, and if we do, what impact is going to have on the person making the application? Because if my understanding is, my views are the same as Colonel Switzer's and probably everybody else around the table. This person presents a very compelling case, but based on the rules, doesn't exactly fit within the parameters of an exemption, which means that we are all inclined, well, certainly I'm inclined to give a person an exemption under these circumstances. But I don't want to wait a month to do it if that's going to have an adverse impact on the employee.
I see where you're
prepared to
coming
do
from,
it
Mr. Mayor. The only problem is we have to think about is whether or not on a temporary basis he could move in with them while we do, because I don't want to hastily do, I know that city is going to take control after in a month or so, so it may be a moot problem for us anyway, but at the same time, you don't want to start to create exceptions that later on even the city may have to deal with because we did it for one person. I think, like I said, my heart is saying yes now, but at the same time, I want to be within the rules. So Mark, you help us out on this one.
I think what, if I'm hearing you, it's based on the information we have here, it's in violation of the current rules.
Right.
That's why Colonel Switzer is making a recommendation to change them going forward. So it kind of puts us in a dilemma, Mayor, as to how do you circumvent the rules in order to approve this waiver?
We don't have to wait a month. I mean,
No, we
you
don't.
could do it,
We
we
can
could have a
get it.
special meeting. I mean, if this is an
Right.
emergency.
Absolutely.
We could research,
Right.
deal with Colonel Switzer's request, and we could act on it.
Right.
Okay.
And if I would suggest, we have David Newberger, who is an attorney and who is our commissioner for the disabled in the city of St. Louis. I'd love to have him involved at least in commenting on behalf of the city, any change in the rule that may address this situation.
So his motion, Mike second it, now we need to vote on it.
Perhaps if I think my motion asked for this presentation at the next meeting. I don't think I said next regular meeting, so I would be in favor if we can do it a special meeting or even a telephonic meeting to address this situation for this individual as soon as possible. After
That's
the
okay, we
input
can just
from
announce it.
the Commissioner for the Disabled for the city and the Chief is provided.
Are you amending your previous motion or making a different motion?
I don't think I'm amending my previous motion. I would say I'm clarifying my previous motion because my previous motion just said next meeting and didn't say next regular meeting.
Right. And my second still stands.
Right. It's been moved and seconded.
Vote. So we got yay. Aye.
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 Item E concerns a summary of year-end budget transfers for fiscal year 2013. You may recall that at the last board meeting, the board approved giving the Director of Budget and Finance the authority to make budget transfers in light of the close of the fiscal year, with the proviso that he report back on the transfers that he made. This is his fulfillment of that promise. And you can see that the budget transfers that he did make, and so we would ask the board to accept the director's submission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item F concerns reallocation of fiscal year 2014 budget allocations to match the board's approved budget. The original police budget was approved by the board in April of this year. Since then, the city has voted on what the appropriate amount of the budget actually is, and so the budget director has proposed certain transfers from some of the accounts, and correspondingly has accounted for transfers of a like amount into other accounts. And so we would ask the board to approve the budget director's proposed transfers.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next regularly scheduled open board meeting shall be held on Wednesday, August 21, 2013, at Police Headquarters, 1200 Clark Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri. And the board intends to vote to go into a closed session at 8:00 a.m. on Wednesday, August 21, 2013, at Police Headquarters, 1200 Clark, to discuss matters of discipline, hiring, firing, promotion, litigation, causes for legal action, and confidential and privileged communications with legal counsel, with a closed record and a closed vote pursuant to Section 610.021 of the Missouri Revised Statutes. And now I would ask for a motion to end the open session and reconvene the executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Roll call vote. Colonel Gray?
Aye.
Colonel Turner?
Aye.
Colonel Irwin?
Aye.
Colonel Switzer?
Aye.
Mayor Slay?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
You kind of jumped.
I did, I skipped over it.
I move that the board go into closed session in order to have confidential communication with legal counsel concerning legal cause of action pursuant to Section 610.021, subsection 1 of Missouri Revised Statute, discuss the hiring, firing, the discipline, or promotion of employee pursuant to Section 610.021, subsection 3 of Missouri Revised Statute, consider individual personnel records, performance ratings, or other pertaining to employments, applications, or employment pursuant to Section 610.021, subsection 13 of the Missouri Revised Statute.
Is there a second to
A
this?
second.
Let's try that again. Colonel Gray?
Aye.
Colonel Turner?
Aye.
Colonel Irwin? Colonel Switzer?
Aye.
Mayor Slay?
Aye.